Welcome to the RotoWire Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. And now, as you can see, video cast. We're going to try it out this week, give it a shot, hopefully bring the content to you guys on more platforms. Of course, I'm Jake Letarski. I'm joined today by John Litterine. If you're out there on Twitter, give John a follow at JONLITTERINE. You can follow me at RotoJake. Today we're going to be making our picks for the biggest fights at UFC 264, McGregor versus Poirier. Of course, the Fight IQ guys are going to be coming back with you. Sean, Joe, Chris, they'll be here Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to try to give you an early look at mostly the main card, maybe a little bit of the extra card, kind of an early section of that. Also, don't forget to check out John's Draftkings article up on RotoWire.com right now. That is free. Check out the betting section on RotoWire.com. We've got all different kinds of props set up, organized to help you in the best way possible. There's some cool ways to use that to your DFS advantage as well. But first and foremost, John, good to have you here. Good to have you on video. How's it going?
Oh, well, I can't match your beard, but besides that, it's fine.
Yeah, we got a taste of that on Fight IQ for the last pay-per-view when I had a subbed in. Just a pandemic beard, I guess that we had to stick with. Exactly. I wasn't going anywhere in public for a few months, so why not try it out? And I guess it's just stuck here. But I know everyone here listening, itching to hear some Conor McGregor talk. But first, man, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about how the UFC did Francis Ngannou dirty. We were asked about the last couple, the best headlines we can kind of talk about to break the ice, and really that is it. Of course, August 7th, we're going to have an interim heavyweight championship belt. Cyril Gane and why is it breaking my mind? Derek Lewis, of course. Can't forget about Derek Lewis. Gane and Lewis. Man, that's got to be a tough break for Francis, huh?
Yeah, I don't like it. Interim belts for me are like a last resort. And it's not like we haven't seen Francis recently, so you don't have that. You don't have that excuse. And the other thing, someone mentioned on Twitter, I don't remember who it was, how the other crazy thing is, where's Stipe in all this? He hasn't been mentioned about anything. And it's like they kind of, he's around, but like this whole thing's really weird, And I get that. Derek Lewis is from Texas, and I think the event's in Houston, so that's certainly played into it, and that's part of it. But I don't know, man. Interim titles for me should be like a last resort. A guy gets injured, a guy keeps, having to cancel this, that, the other thing. But a guy hasn't fought in 3 months, 4 months, and you're already strapping an interim title on someone else. I don't like it.
Yeah. The rules are different for Conor, of course, but he can go a whole year on the sidelines and, without having to worry about this interim title. It seems like it's just a negotiating tactic. The reports are maybe that Ngannou wasn't quite ready to fight in June, July, or August, and they really wanted to get Derek Lewis on this August card. They already have Amanda Nunes on the card, but she's got some of the worst record. As awesome as she is, she just can't sell pay-per-view, so she's one of the worst at selling, numbers-wise at least, in terms of that. So they wanted to get a heavyweight fight on there, and it might be some ESPN related thing, how they have to have so many title fights. Of course, the card we're about to talk about, no title fights at all here, so maybe they're making up for a little bit of lost time here. But I guess it's a common negotiating tactic. It is kind of dirty, but I guess it's a business. It is what it is. And they threatened to give an interim if he doesn't want to defend, and he was unable to defend after 3-4 months, which is insane. And like you said, John, where's Stipe? Where's John Jones in all of this? What's going to happen to him? It's really kind of a jab at him just as much as everything else, because when's he going to get a chance to fight for the heavyweight belt training after all this time?
Yeah, and the other problem is, neither of these fights, this is my personal opinion, neither of these title fights do a whole heck of a lot for me. Like, Cyril and Lewis will be like entertaining, but I'm certainly not at the point where whoever wins, I think, can beat Ngannou. So, that doesn't do a ton for me. And, that's Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena, right?
Yeah, the Venezuelan. That
doesn't do anything for me either. So, and then we know the UFC's tendency on cards where they have 2 championship fights to kind of punt the rest of it. We've talked about this how many times. So, I hope that's a strong undercard, because I know there are 2 title fights on it. They're not the best 2 title fights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll be tuning in, of course, because I love me some Derek Lewis. I can't get enough.
No, that'll
of that
be
guy.
Entertaining, but it's not like I don't think whoever wins is going to beat Ngannou or anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know what happened after the Lewis Ngannou fight. The first time, probably one of the worst heavyweight titles.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Title fight, one of the worst of all time. But anyway, we don't need to talk about those guys any longer. It's good to touch on that, of course. But let's talk about what the audience is here for. They want to hear us discuss Conor McGregor against Dustin Poirier. Now, DraftKings has this one pretty much as a straight pick. I'm 8,100 a piece for these guys. The odds, last week when I was looking at it, Poirier, and it was basically a pick 'em too on the odds, and I'm thinking I'm going to go out to Vegas this Saturday, and I might go ahead and catch this fight in person. But I'm thinking like, geez, how many house payments do I bet on Poirier at even money? And we'll talk about why in a second here. But the money's moving a little bit. Poirier minus 120, McGregor plus 100. Vegas does like this one to end early. Odds to finish are minus 325 here. It's a close fight. The odds say it's a close fight here, John. What are your thoughts on it?
Looks like a close fight to me. So I'm going to start with the obligatory note that if you plan on betting Conor McGregor, you should do so within the next 48 hours maximum, I would say. Certainly before Friday. Because once everybody ascends on Vegas, that price tag is going to go up. It's how it works. He's the most popular fighter in the sport, and people bet him. People who know nothing about MMA bet him. His number is going to go up.
Yeah.
I imagine
I will say the Irish travel amazingly well. I was out in Vegas for UFC 200. It was supposed to be McGregor Diaz. Of course, they ended up going to Bones DC, which turned out to be DC Silva. But the arena was filled. Like when I would walk around, Irish people everywhere carrying Irish flags. They were ready. They had all bought their reservations and everything for Conor. So
when this is all said and done, I would guess that Poirier, he's like minus 125 now, right?
Yeah.
I would guess he'll be like minus 115 and Conor will be like minus 110. I don't see any scenario in which the money doesn't swing towards McGregor by the time this thing rolls around on Saturday. So
which is why I'm going to wait on my Poirier bets because I want to maybe get even money on.
And if you're on the other side and you're going to bet McGregor, I would certainly say do it within the next 48 hours. Now, when we go to the picks, I flip flopped on this one, and that's obviously easy to do considering both guys are 8,100. Everybody knows the third fight between the two. Conor won the first one. Poirier won the second one. I ended up taking McGregor here. I'm not thrilled about it. I just thought that I liked how Conor looked in the second fight until Poirier started destroying him with leg kicks. It literally turned the entire tide of the fight. Conor was fine for the vast majority of the first round, other than the leg kicks. And Poirier just unloaded, and Conor had no answer. And by the time it was over, he had no balance, and he couldn't properly defend himself, and he got overwhelmed on the feet, which is going to happen when you only have one working leg.
When you couldn't fire back power either. Right. You need a base to stand on.
So I'm essentially betting that John Kavanaugh and all those guys can come up with some kind of game plan to limit Dustin Poirier's leg kicks. And if that's the case, I'll take Conor. That said, I definitely think Poirier probably has more one-punch stopping power than Conor does. I think Conor's probably...
a controversial statement. Some people might not agree with that.
I think Conor's a more fluid striker. I think he's a more technical striker. I think Poirier is just a tad more physical. And the leg kicks... Look, they concern me because Conor looked like he'd never seen a leg kick before. And it totally just changed the entire tide of the fight. I was back and forth on this. I ultimately took McGregor. I would certainly prefer Dustin from a DraftKings standpoint, probably, only because it's the same thing we just talked about with the betting odds. Conor McGregor is the most owned fighter anytime he fights because he's the most popular fighter. People who don't know anything about the sport, people who don't watch the sport, token fans, they watch McGregor and they insert him in their lineups. People who just, want the action. He's the name they know. He's the guy they're going to roll to. So I think there's going to be a serious suppression in terms of Dustin Poirier's ownership on DraftKings. And I think that makes him a more attractive DraftKings play. Again, I went with McGregor to win. It's 50-50, which is essentially what the DraftKings salaries, and I think by the time Saturday rolls around, I think that's what the Vegas odds are going to tell you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going the other side on this one. I'm going Dustin Poirier. I don't know how much like confirmation bias it is, because after I watched that second fight, I'm like, if they do a trilogy, which I see, I'm going to pick Dustin. And I know Conor looked, good in the first round. He had some time off. So that was a big factor for this. So not as much time off here for this fight. And I see your point. The leg kicks made all the difference in the world. He was going after that lead leg, and Conor did not have an answer. And John Kavanagh, I'm sure he's going to come up with a game plan, and they're going to figure out a way to be able to negate that aspect of the fight, hopefully, or at least a strategy to check a few of them. He's got to check a couple, or he's going to have no chance.
He has to throw something else at him.
Yeah,
or he's going to get overwhelmed.
He's a southpaw, maybe switch stances a little bit, work more out of orthodox. We don't know. But Dustin Poirier's camp at American Top Team, those coaches are no slouches either.
Nope.
And I think they're going to try to play chess, and they're going to try to think a move ahead. All right, so if Conor's going to try to check this leg kick, and he's going to have this plan, do we shoot? Do we try a different combination? Do we try something else? And they're going to try to outmaneuver Kavanagh and company. And I have just as much as nothing against Kavanagh. I just have just as much confidence in the folks at ATT to get Dustin ready for this fight. The other thing that really did it for me is just career trajectory. You could argue that Conor's maybe been on a little bit of a downswing. He's got all the money in the world. What's he fighting for? Dustin Poirier, on the other hand, now I know I'm going to this whole narrative-based explanation. Dustin Poirier, on the other hand, he wants to be champion. And, Charles Oliveira is going to be there ringside. I think you can bet that once this trilogy is over, Oliveira will get the winner, so we're gonna go for a title shot here, and Poirier, more than anything else, obviously he took this fight over the title fight because money's important too. It's prize fighting, but he wants to be champion, and I just think at this point in their respective careers, Poirier might have a little bit more to fight for. So you got the X factor, you got the technical factor. That put me in charge of Poirier. Let me just say though, I've been notorious for picking against Conor for about as long as I've done this, all the way back to Chad Mendes. I've always picked against Conor. So, take that with what you will. I've been doing this picking against Conor, but I really do. I feel confident in Dustin. And when I land in Vegas on Saturday, I intend to put my money where my mouth is here and see what happens.
No, look, Dustin Poirier is 7-1 over the past 4+ years. Those wins include McGregor, Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, and Dan Hooker, and the loss was to Khabib. That's the best of the best of the best. There's no one better. And you want to say you lost to Khabib, that's great. Everybody lost to Khabib. The guy retired undefeated. It is what it is. And I think you brought up another good point. I think Dustin Poirier is the better wrestler. He's certainly the more experienced wrestler.
And you got Conor playing those head games. I don't know if I can say what he tweeted on YouTube, but he kind of egged him on. First person to shoot is a blank, blank, blank.
Look, Conor McGregor's a better wrestler than he gets credit for. I think that's pretty clear. We're going to talk about that again in a second with Stephen Thompson. These guys are better wrestlers than they get credit for. Dustin Poirier is still a better wrestler than Conor McGregor. And he's going to have an edge if we end up on the mat. But this is essentially a pick 'em. And that's what it says it is. But there are points for and against both guys. I'd be pretty surprised if it's not competitive one way or the other.
Oh yeah, should be a good fight.
And I think I like I know it's 25 minutes, which I think I like I wouldn't bet on it, but I think there's a better chance of the fight going the distance than the odds say.
Yeah, you can kind of see.
I wouldn't be confident about it.
Yeah. McGregor Diaz 2, because odds to finish are minus 325.
That seems like a big number.
Diaz 2, Diaz submitted him in the first fight, and then McGregor took him 5 rounds, and that's one. If Conor doesn't land a left, that's one possible way to victory. Path to victory is if he.
Yeah, I'd feel better more like minus 250. Minus 325 seems high.
Yeah, so maybe there's a little bit of value there, but
it should be a good fight.
Yeah, it's going to be a great fight, and the odds are so close for a reason here. I gave all my technical reason for why I'm going to take Dustin Poirier with his camp and the narrative and all of that. But Conor could land the left at any point and just make me eat my words. We've seen him do it over and over again. He could 100% do that, come out more ready. Here's one last question on this fight before we move on. T-Mobile, Las Vegas, full house, packed crowd. They did this in Abu Dhabi for their second fight. Does the full crowd, you imagine the crowd, if it affects anybody, it's got to be Conor, right?
You would think so. You would think he would get the bump, but then you go to the flip side. I mean, Dustin Poirier's seen it all. He's fought everybody.
Yep.
I can't imagine he's going to be overwhelmed by it, So look, it's good. I wish it was for something more than just breaking a trilogy.
Yep.
But like you said, the winner's probably going to end up getting a title. So it's title shot. So it is for something more.
Yep. Yeah. Nobody's getting a belt on him on Saturday night.
Not Saturday.
But there will be a title shot. Charles Oliveira will be waiting, to get that opportunity. And Oliveira against either of those guys, I don't even want to think about that.
I was just gonna say I'm not coming up with that now. I gotta look at that.
No way. We got to really think about that one. That'll be a tough one. But all right, co-main event. Like you said, no titles on this card. We've got another very excellent fight as the co-main event here. Sometimes Conor fights, they just kind of throw whoever they can on there. And as we get down the card, it feels like that a little bit. But this is a good co-main event. Gilbert Burns, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Thompson is 8,500 on DraftKings. Burns is 7,700. Thompson's minus 155. Burns is plus 130. I looked and tried to see what the opening odds were on this one, and it was actually Thompson that opened up as an underdog, and it essentially flipped, and it flipped over, and then now Thompson's the favorite here. I'm not sure I'm seeing that, but what are you seeing with this one?
I'm not seeing. This looks like a ton of recency bias to me. Anybody who reads, my work or watches our pods will know that I've been championing the Stephen Thompson bandwagon from the start. He's one. Robert Whitaker's another. There are a few guys. And as much as it pains me to do it, I'm going to take Gilbert Burns here. I think he's being overlooked because of his loss to Kamaru Usman. And I think people are forgetting that he had Usman in all sorts of trouble in that fight early on. Knocked him down, looked for all the world like he was going to get the stoppage. Didn't. Kind of gassed out a little bit. I mean, part of that was him gassing out. Part of it was Usman just being so good and eventually wearing him out. But I think Gilbert Burns is being a little bit overlooked here. This is a guy in Gilbert Burns, who has unquestionably made significant strides in terms of his striking game. It's never going to be on the level of his ground game because he's a BJJ black belt and a wizard on the mat. But Gilbert Burns is a better striker than he was just a couple of years ago. He's a better striker than he gets credit for. That's imperative against Stephen Thompson, because if this turns into a 15-minute kickboxing match, Gilbert Burns is going to lose. There's very few men in the world who can hang with Stephen Thompson in a 15-minute kickboxing match. I don't think Gilbert Burns is one of them. This is a rebound spot for Burns, and quite honestly, it has to be. The guy only lost one fight, but he lost to the champion, the guy who doesn't look like he's going to lose his belt anytime soon. And outside of the first couple minutes, he kind of lost in pretty convincing fashion. I don't think he can afford a second straight setback. And then if you go a little deeper and you look at like the pure numbers, the numbers are pretty similar. Wonderboy lands 4.24 significant strikes per minute. Burns is at 3.22. Which is kind of a little bit to be expected given how much time Thompson spends on the feet and Burns spends on the mat. But once you get beyond that, as far in terms of striking accuracy and strike absorb per minute and overall defense, the numbers are really similar, which surprised me. You would think Thompson would have a major edge in terms of that. The question for Thompson is going to be able to stay on his feet. Gilbert Burns averages just over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's a big physical fighter. Stephen Thompson's takedown defense is 78%. And it's pretty much what we just talked about with Conor. Thompson's wrestling, Conor's wrestling will never be on the level of their striking, but they're better wrestlers than they get credit for. Just Stephen Thompson, Chris Weidman's brother-in-law, works out with Weidman all the time. Look, his wrestling is better than he gets credit for. He's a big, long guy. He's got long limbs. He's hard to get to the ground. I think if this ends up being a 15-minute kickboxing match, that Stephen Thompson wins. But I think there's some recency bias in terms of Gilbert Burns being overlooked, I should say. I think the fact he got stomped by Usman is affecting his price here. And everybody gets stomped by Usman. Nobody's beaten him yet. Mm-hmm. So, the next guy who really, takes him to the limit will be the first. Yeah. I just looked at this as a value thing. If you told me the prices were identical, maybe I would take Thompson. There just seemed to be too much value on Burns for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if I told you right now that Kamaru Usman is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter on the planet, That statement would not be outlandish considering Khabib's retired.
Top 3 easily.
You got Bones on past this. You can maybe work Nunes or something in there, but losing to Kamaru Usman, there is no shame in that. He's the best there was, and I guess let me start by playing a devil's advocate here. I would think, Thompson has never been submitted in his UFC career. He's only been KO'd once, and that was by Pettis with that wild Superman punch.
How that happened was fluky.
Yeah, you could say maybe he can be got, but you can also say, yeah, that happened once in a whole bunch of fights here. And then, of course, Thompson has the 2-inch height and 4-inch reach advantages. Those are all things in the shades of Thompson. That's if I wanted to play devil's advocate. But, as much as I want to make for controversial, debate show, whatnot, I'm going to actually go with Burns on this one, too. The value, I think, is definitely there. Burns is 4 years younger, and, he was on that 6-fight winning streak, tearing through people, tore through Tyron Woodley, has some striking, not like guys like Damian Maia or whatnot are the epitome of striking, but Burns can get you. You can be got by Burns if you're not being careful. And I know it's the basically the strong point of Wonder Boy. But I think Burns might be able to hold his own and land a little bit. And if he can just get like a few cobwebs to come in there, then the takedown's open here. And I agree with you that these odds, they would have been flip-flopped. If I had to play Gist the line, I would have flipped these right in half and had Burns around a -145 favorite. But recency bias, you nailed it, man. People are way too just way too much recency bias here.
And we never ever seem to talk about it because he looks like he's literally like 20. Stephen Thompson's 38 years old.
Yep.
Look, and I know he hasn't been in the wars that a guy like Donald Cerrone's been in, or a guy like Diego Sanchez. He doesn't have the MMA miles on his body that those guys do.
Less frequently, for one, and he also protects himself better. Right. He's not as reckless.
But he's 38 years old, and sooner or later, look, I'm not saying he's going to fall off a cliff, but sooner or later, the reactions and the athletic, it's just going to drop a tad. It's just how it works.
I feel like this is his last shot. It's his last run at a belt. If he can get a win here, then you have an argument to put him up against Usman in the near future, where I won't pick him there. But you put him up against Usman and give him one last shot at the age of 38.
I will say he has a skill set that should age well because, like you said, he doesn't. He's mostly on his feet. He doesn't absorb a ton of damage. He's kind of in and out as far as landing and getting out of the way. So he certainly doesn't have the miles on his body that some of these other guys do, but. It's just I think in other cases, if a guy was 38 years old, that would kind of be what we talked about first.
Yep.
And we don't really bring it up with him at all.
Yeah. I mean, for normal humans, you think 34 would be just on the, like I'm talking about Burns here, 34 would be just on the edge of your athletic prime, if not past it. 38 would be almost definitely past your athletic prime for anyone but a heavyweight here. So, yeah, we don't touch on that enough. And that was actually one of the big... That was one of the things that swayed me into definitely agreeing with you with this pick of Burns. 7,700, man. There's some big favorites on this card. We'll talk about O'Malley as the last one a little bit here, but you're gonna have to pick your dogs as you do any card. Even if you want the main event. Let's just, from a DraftKings strategy, 8,100, you're paying less than the average per fighter slot for someone in a 5-round fight. You want to take your stand there, right?
I think you're probably going to want the next fight too in some form or fashion.
Yes, exactly here. So, you take your main event, you take your underdog here, then maybe you've got some options here to pay up for favorites if and when you believe, that they're sure things. But like you said, let's get into it. There's a heavyweight fight. I've got some stats here that'll tell you that it's not the best of heavyweight fights, but
you are correct.
Since Greg Hardy is part of it, it's getting a spot on a pay-per-view and a Conor pay-per-view, no less here. Let's talk about Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy. Tuivasa 8,400 on DraftKings, Hardy 7,800. Tuivasa about a -145 favorite. Comeback on Hardy +120. Odds to finish actually less than the main event, about -180 here. Couple of heavyweights, couple of low-level heavyweights, you could argue. If they didn't have the name, they could very well be. They could end up on the prelims here. But whether you I don't think anyone actually likes Greg Hardy. I think people just want to see him lose, but that gives him enough popularity in a sport where you can get knocked out cold for people to root for that here. But Hardy pretty cheap. The UFC has been giving him, with the exception of Volkov, has been giving him pretty beatable guys here.
And he took the Volkov fight late in his defense. He stepped in there.
Mm-hmm. And I know Volkov lost to Gane, but I mean,
Volkov's good.
He's a great heavyweight.
Yeah, he's good.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, so they give him a much more reasonable opponent here. Tai Tuivasa, the owner of the Shui, I guess you could say. I would guess I'd call him the owner of the Shui. If I'm wearing sandals right now, but I think I might actually have to wear a shoe to T-Mobile on Saturday, just in case. Just in case.
It's not great that he's known more for that than his fighting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we'll take it away here. So we got these two heavyweights, low-level heavyweights. But how you want to attack this on DraftKings?
I have no idea. I know that sounds really bad because we're giving you a prediction video. Look, this is a fight like you mentioned. It's on the main card of a pay-per-view. It has no impact whatsoever on the rankings at heavyweight. So it's kind of one of those anything can happen here. Tai Tuivasa won 3 straight fights to begin his UFC career, got overhyped, then he lost 3 in a row. He's won back-to-back fights via knockout. One was against Stefan Struve, who has since retired. The other is against someone named Harry Hunsucker.
What? And that was his only UFC fight. Hasn't fought since.
Yeah, I write a preview column for every single UFC event. I write the recaps for 90% of them. I don't remember Harry Hunsucker. I think this is the first time I don't remember a guy's name. I don't remember that fight at all. I'm sure it happened. I don't remember it. These are 2 guys who just swing for the bleachers with every single punch. There's no wrestling. There's nothing fancy. It's just let me go in and try and knock you out before you knock me out. The cardio on both guys is not good. And Hardy at least has theoretical athletic upside. I mean, the guy, he was an all-pro in the NFL. I'm pretty sure he was an all-pro in the NFL. So he has elite world-class athleticism. Of course, he hasn't been in MMA for, particularly long. He doesn't have the MMA cardio that he had as a professional football player. So that explosiveness that you see from Greg Hardy comes in really short spurts. And when I say short spurts, I don't mean like 30 seconds. I mean like 5 seconds. He'll come and try and attack you, and then if the attack doesn't work, he's gassed for a minute.
It's like a football play, 10 seconds of explosiveness.
Yeah, essentially. He's
like
rushing.
There's a 40-second play clock.
Pretty much, he's like rushing the line, trying to kill the quarterback or the running back, and if he doesn't get him, he has 40 seconds before he's ready to rush the quarterback again. Look, I took Tuivasa. I don't think you can take Hardy at this point against anybody halfway decent. Because his path to victory is so limited. If he doesn't knock you out, it's almost impossible to see him winning. The cardio's so bad, and there's nothing besides power punches that if he doesn't knock you out, I don't see how he's going to win. I don't hate the idea of punting Hardy in some lineups at 7,800 simply because I don't think Tuivasa is very good on the other side.
Yeah.
And I could see Tuivasa just getting caught or something because it's just 2 guys who just are uber aggressive. But I mean, this fight doesn't do a ton for me. And it's just Tuivasa's cardio is not. I've been surprised with how bad Hardy's. I shouldn't say that. I've been surprised that Hardy's cardio hasn't gotten better, I guess is the way to put it. This is a guy
that's tried to use an inhaler in the octagon before.
Yeah, you can't do that. I'm surprised they didn't tell him that.
If you want to know what the no contest on his record is, not the DQ, but the no contest, there's always something weird that follows this guy.
Yeah, so you have a guy who last fought Harry Hunsucker against the guy who tried to use an inhaler inside the octagon.
Yeah, I mean that says it all here. Now, when I was
good luck trying to pick a winner.
Yeah, exactly. But see, the thing is, though, I think you need, like you said, you might need this fight for your DraftKings lineup here. Now, I originally wrote down Hardy when I was going to make this pick because of what I see as an athletic advantage. I mean, you look at Tuivasa's body, you wouldn't guess professional athlete immediately, despite the amount of tattoos. which are awesome. But anyway, neither here nor there. But I figure, okay, if you can swim past an NFL defensive lineman, why can't you slip a jab and counter? That would be my first thought here. But then I started looking at this, and I started kind of going back on Hardy's fights and dissecting his record a little bit. Hardy doesn't have an actual UFC win over anybody that's currently on the UFC roster. There's the stat that I wanted to throw out. Maurice Green, Yorgan De Castro, Juan Adams, all been cut. Dmitry Smolyakov suspended and then cut. So you go back.
I forgot the crochet boss was sent packing.
Yeah, the crochet boss. He was popular for a little. That was a recent cut. That's really the only thing that could make this stat work. Tuivasa, his only 2 wins against guys still on the roster are technically Huntsucker if he's still around because it's only one fight, and then Andrei Arlovsky.
Who's 44 or whatever he is?
Yeah. So, I mean, that tells you, that tells you all you need to know about this fight. That's how it illustrates the quality of this fight. Again, Hardy, I would say, is probably more athletic in a traditional sense. He has the height and reach advantages. You have to get a little bit of exposure. If you're making 100 lineups trying to take down a GPP, you need to at least account for the possibility that Hardy comes out and lands, and in his 1-minute flurry where he empties his entire gas tank, he puts Tuivasa to sleep, because that can happen. That is very well within the range of outcomes.
And what would you say, 15% maybe? 20?
Yeah, if you're doing 100 lineups, 15, 20 Hardy lineups seems about right, and maybe 20, 25. Little bit more Tuivasa.
Look, I don't want to pile on Tuivasa, but Hardy's not facing anybody good. There's no deception here. What you're getting. Exactly. It's like whoever lands first and crumbles first.
Mm-hmm. So here's the X factor in this for me. If Tuivasa can somehow withstand that early storm, we know about Hardy's cardio. We know about Tuivasa's cardio, but I think the X factor could be leg kicks in this fight here. Now I go back when you watch film to the Greg Hardy and Yorgan De Castro fight. In the first round, Yorgan De Castro beat up Hardy's lead leg. He was attacking it, and then De Castro he came up limp. He hurt himself somehow. It was a lower leg injury, and he wasn't firing off the same, and then Hardy managed to win the next 2 rounds here. So I think there's a weakness in this game if you're Tuivasa, who can mix up leg kicks. He showed it before. He landed 19 against Blagoy Ivanov. He landed a few hard ones against Huntsucker in his last fight, a few against Andrei Arlovsky, who's seen it all and defended it all. But I think if he can chop Hardy's lead leg, like De Castro did, the fight will eventually come to him. It'll slow down that explosiveness, like we talked about in the beginning with Poirier chopping Connor's leg. You lose the power to throw off of. It becomes a lot easier to stand. I don't know how Hardy can fight if he switches stance, how much they've worked. He's an ATT guy too. Great coaching, but very late to the MMA game. I'm seeing an X factor being leg kicks for Tuivasa, and again, he can get caught. Anybody can get caught in the heavyweight division. But I think if he can extend this fight for a little bit and go after that lead leg, there's a path to victory there, possibly a 2nd or 3rd round stoppage. And that's what I'm going to call. I'm going to pick Tuivasa.
Yeah, I would say the odds of Greg Hardy knowing how to properly defend leg kicks is exceedingly small. Mm-hmm. That's not why he's in there.
Yeah. He's just going to bank on his leg being huge and being able to take enough of them before knock him out before he takes.
If Tuivasa isn't foolish and actually goes in there with a game plan of trying to take out a limb, as opposed to just getting in a slugfest, he should win without issue as long as he doesn't get caught.
Circle, throw the leg kick. Circle, make Hardy mad. It's not a fan-friendly game plan, but it's a game plan that I would think would be successful.
And this is on. You're right. This is on the main card. One, because even though he's not popular in a good way, he is popular. Greg Hardy.
He's a villain.
Yes, he is.
I guess if you could call it, So
yeah, he is. And the other reason is that the odds of this seeing the final bell are not particularly great. And I'm actually a little surprised that this fight isn't opening the pay-per-view. Because this is the kind of thing they usually roll with to open a pay-per-view, because it figures to be an action-packed thing where some guy doesn't get up, and that's kind of what they like to do. But
yeah, that hypes people up for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, the depth isn't the strongest here. There's a couple more good fights we're going to talk about here, but it's just they've always done this. ESPN, UFC has always done with this Greg Hardy, putting him in big spots, and when he's not illegally kneeing somebody or pulling out an inhaler, sometimes there's fireworks. So We'll see what happens here. Let's jump to
pull that in an inhaler. That's great.
I know. I still can't. I can picture it too. What?
Oh God, it was amazing.
What the hell is he doing? Yeah,
and watching people on Twitter just blow like, did he just pull out an inhaler during a fight? You can't do that.
The commission guy told him it was okay. That's also just as mystifying. But anyway, yeah, that's gonna follow Hardy. I mean, one of many stories that'll follow.
He'll be retired, and that'll be the highlight of his career.
Mm-hmm. All right, so. Anyway, we got to move on, though. Women's bantamweight fight. Irene Aldana, Yana Kunitskaya. Aldana, slight favorite at -120. Comeback on Kunitskaya, +100. 8,300 on DraftKings will get you Aldana. Kunitskaya, 7,900. What are you thinking about this one, John?
Yana Kunitskaya is my favorite underdog play on the entire card. I don't think Irene Aldana is very good. Aldana lost her first couple bouts with UFC, then won 3 in a row. She's 2-2 in her last 4 fights. I was really concerned about what happened in the Holly Holm fight, her most recent fight, last October. It was a main event spotlight, which is, that's another story. But Aldana was essentially routed bell to bell. It was not a good performance. And like, say, Holly Holm obviously is a former UFC champion, but at her age, her skill set is extremely limited. You know what you're getting. It's really just, it's kind of the wonder. It's the Wonder Boy essentially, the Wonder Boy skill set where it's just pure kickboxing.
She's 39, Wonder Boy 38.
Yeah, and I was really, really concerned with what I saw from Irene Aldana in that fight. She did not look good at all. Yana Kunitskaya has probably been better with UFC than she gets credit for. She made her company debut in March 2018. Was destroyed by Chris Cyborg. That was a title fight, which is back when the division and the belt was made for Cyborg. That's a different story. Kunitskaya has rebounded. She's won 4 or 5 since. The only defeat in that time was against Aspen Ladd, who is one of the better young fighters in women's MMA. This probably, I have a hard time seeing this develop into anything other than a kickboxing match. Aldana's 3 inches taller, but I don't see the explosiveness or the requisite skill set to dominate her opposition on the feet. If Stephen Thompson gets in a groove, he can just flat out wear you out on the feet. I don't see that with Aldana. And I'm really concerned about Aldana's defense. She lands 5.2 significant strikes per minute. That is a fantastic number until you look at the fact that she eats 5.97 a minute. And Yana Kunitskaya, for comparison's sake, absorbs 2.62 a minute. So essentially, Aldana's eating 3+ more strikes a minute, a major, major issue in a fight that's probably going to be a kickboxing match. And essentially, Aldana's power has disappeared as the competition she's faced has gotten better. She has some knockouts on her record. They all came early in her career against lesser competition. Toss in the fact Yana Kunitskaya is engaged to Thiago Santos. Obviously, not all that long ago, probably should have taken the UFC light heavyweight title from John Jones. Thiago's an elite striker, tons of one-punch power. I think having that tutelage only helps. I'm rolling with Kunitskaya here. I didn't hesitate on this one for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wanted to hesitate on it, but in the end, I'm going to be with you here. I like Kunitskaya in this fight as well for a couple of reasons here. But the main note, really the one note I wrote down for this one is it's been 280 days for Aldana, or it will have been since that home fight, and now since her last pro fight. She's coming off foot surgery. Now, there are 2 ways to take this, and I know I'm jumping into the narrative base here. One, there was a rumor that she broke her foot before the home fight, and that contributed to why she looked so badly. And that maybe you do the narrative and say that, well, will she be healthy for this one?
Right,
and then
it's
maybe
fixed now, so she'll look better.
She'll look better. So that's one. If you're going to make a case for Aldana, that would be the one to go. Otherwise, it's 2 sides. One, I really don't like taking someone coming off injury, especially like a broken foot, because how much sparring are you doing in that 280 days? How does it heal? That can get rebroken, that kind of thing. But then the other side of the narrative is if it was broken for the home fight and she's since got a chance to heal, how much better will she look here? I mean, this fight's plus 200 odds to finish. I don't think I have a ton of exposure on DraftKings to this fight, and this is going to be a weird one where I'll probably play less DraftKings because I can't actually adjust my lineups while I'm in Las Vegas, or I got to call someone and have them do it. Anyway, it's a weird thing, so I might play less DraftKings, but I just don't see myself having a ton of exposure to this fight. I would probably be with you and take more Kunitskaya. I like her overall rounded game, can grapple if she has to, comes in with powerful strikes. So anyone that's fought Cyborg, and is actually able to be sanctioned like that at 145, should have some power behind her. And I believe that she has enough to outpoint Aldana. It'll be a close fight. I don't see the high score. I mean, it would have to be a lot of strikes landed to put up a good DraftKings score.
I think Kunitskaya is a better just bet, flat out just, wager if you're on one of our, sports pools or anything like that.
I'm looking at plus 100 for, she's pretty much plus 100 across the board here. So
I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up minus something by the time this starts.
Yeah,
I could see her being minus 110, minus 115 by the time this kicks off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm playing a dangerous game. I'm landing in Vegas at like noon, and then the fights start at 4 Vegas time. So, knock on wood for no delays, and I got plenty of time to get to the book here beforehand. But I guess there's mobile betting now too, so we can worry about that. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about this one a ton more just because, I see the ceiling being a little bit limited here. Curious to see what Joe has to say on Friday. The women's fight whisperer. We'll see what he has going here. Let's keep going though. We talked about, maybe the heavyweight should have been the opener of the pay-per-view, but there's another pretty good opener here. Well, an okay opener. The UFC wants to showcase one of its budding stars on a Conor McGregor card. That seems like, what this is here. It's Sean O'Malley taking on Chris Moutinho. It was supposed to be O'Malley against Louis Smolka. Louis Smolka had to drop out. They're bringing Moutinho from Cage Fury FC to come up and fight O'Malley. I don't see a DraftKings salary for Moutinho just yet. I imagine that will be added in short order. Nope, I don't see one yet. But O'Malley's 9,500, super pricey, as one would expect here. That was because DraftKings did the salaries 2 weeks ago, though. That was what he was going to be against Smolka. So if anything, you could argue that there is maybe even a little bit of value at 9,500. So you got him as a minus 900 favorite. Come back on Moutinho plus 600. Odds to finish are minus 450. To me, I look at this, and this is nothing, like I said, but a showcase for O'Malley. They give him, there's a reason Merab Dvalishvili wanted this fight.
That was
Ricky
never
Simone
happening.
Wanted this fight. There's a reason the UFC didn't go in that direction. You can see reports about them wanting to do 135, 145, whatever. The reason the UFC didn't go with any of those options is because they want to showcase O'Malley on a McGregor card. To me, it's as simple as that. So they picked an opponent that he should beat. I mean, right? I don't want to discount Moutinho. I'm sure he's great, but he's not undefeated. You want a guy making their UFC debut to be undefeated. He's lost a couple times. He joined Cage Fury FC after years under CES. He has 4 total losses on the lower circuits, 2 by TKO and 2 by sub. I just don't see a way that he gets it done against a striker like O'Malley.
Nope. And I certainly didn't think Smolka was going to get it done either. Mm-hmm. But this is what it is. It's one of those cases where using Sean O'Malley at that price probably, I would say probably could very well pay off. But again, it's just such a huge chunk of your budget that if anything goes wrong in the least, you are totally, totally sunk.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you look at the first round knockout props on RotoWire. He has what I believe is the best one. I gotta go relook it up now. I believe he's got one of the best for.
He should have the best one.
Yeah, win by knockout. Sean O'Malley win by knockout minus 250. The next biggest is Tuivasa at plus 160. Then McGregor at plus 180. Poirier plus 190. Poirier plus 200. We only really have the main card and then the Condit fight on here as far as ones that are displaying right now. But O'Malley definitely has the best win by KO spread on here. So it's as simple as that for me. And I would imagine that's how it goes. I just don't have a whole lot more to say about that.
Nope, that's about the size of it. It's a showcase event for O'Malley that theoretically should be an even bigger showcase now that he's facing a late notice replacement.
Right on. So, I mean, that pretty much covers, I run down those guys, O'Malley, Tuivasa, McGregor, Topuria. All those guys kind of are big candidates for that gone in 60-second bonus that DraftKings is doing now. What about, anything else you want to hit on this card? I know you wrote about Condit and Griffin in your preview. I don't know if you want to hit on that from a DraftKings standpoint or any other underdogs that maybe you like here. But before we wrap up, I'll just kind of give the floor over to you to see if you got anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I wrote up Condit and Griffin only because when I wrote my preview, O'Malley didn't have an opponent. That's when they were kind of searching for where they were going to go there. The Condit Griffin fight is pretty basic. Carlos Condit's 37 years old. He has a couple unanimous decision wins over Courtney McGee and Matt Brown lately. I like this fight because I think it should be entertaining. And I think that I don't think he's going to win, but I don't know if Carlos Condit's going to get totally overwhelmed. Ultimately, though, I took Max Griffin just because Carlos Condit's takedown defense is 39%. Like, that's like horrendous. And this is a guy we have years and years and years of video on, and it's still 39%, which is like, I was mind blown when I saw that number. Like, I knew it wouldn't be good, but I didn't think it was that bad. And I think Max Griffin could drag him to the ground a couple times and just grind out a couple rounds, and that'll be the end of that. But if you want to flip over to some underdogs that I think are decent, I like Omari Akhmedov against Brad Tavares. Akhmedov 7,600, Tavares is 8,600. That kind of just is one of those value plays for me where I don't think there's $1,000 in salary between the two. I just think it's closer than that. And the other one that I looked at was Ryan Hall at 7,100. Only because he's so damn unique. There's no one who fights like him. You can't find anybody willing to fight him because of how he fights. And I don't know. That seemed like he seemed low to me. Like, every time we see the guy's awesome. He just never fights because no one wants to fight him because he rolls around like an idiot half the time. But when he does fight, he's good. He's like one of the best mat specialists in the world, like, ever. And it's hard to predict. It's hard to predict the submission. And 7,100 seems like a nice price for a guy with an all-world skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Ilya Topuria is he's a really highly regarded prospect, and most people suspect he's going to roll right through him. But I will say one thing: I'm down to one life left in a survivor pool that I'm doing, and I will not be taking Topuria with that because for all we know, Hall's going to just roll into some kind of weird heel hook from the bottom, and I could see him, like Imanari rolling into like a heel hook or just doing something weird, and
I wouldn't say Jessica I with that pick either.
Yeah. No.
We're not going to talk about whether or not. Just,
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess I could see that. I don't know. I like Topuria. I'm not confident enough about it, but maybe I'll have if you're mass entering, maybe get a couple lines. I could see Akhmedov too because Tavares had that shoulder injury, and it seems like that would Akhmedov's just going to.
Akhmedov's actually like not that bad. Like he's decent.
Yeah, he's going to shoot takedowns, and you better have two solid shoulders if you're going to defend takedowns from him. The only downside is you can get underdog money on him, but how high scoring is it going to be?
It won't be great. I mean, Akhmedov is 6-1-1 in his last 8 fights. The loss was to Chris Weidman. The draw was Marvin Vettori. So I mean, he's hung in reasonably well against good competition. Mm-hmm. He's got a win over Ian Heinisch, who was good. He beat Tom Breese in his last fight. Tom Breese is actually good. He's legitimately good and underrated. I think Akhmedov's of the ones we haven't gone into detail. Akhmedov's probably one of my favorite underdog plays on the card. He just seems too cheap.
All right. Fair enough. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that. I mean, between the dogs that we picked on the main card, the few more that you offered up, seems like plenty of ways to build a lineup, whether or not you want to include O'Malley in that lineup. I think you do, because once you take the main event and maybe you take Burns, then you're freeing up salary for you. But that'll be one of the biggest decisions we'll have to make here on this whole card. But man, I got to get this mixed up and get to watching my Bucks tonight here in the finals. So I'm going to wrap this up. Do you have any final thoughts here, John?
No, you watch your Bucks. I'm gonna watch DeGrom and your Brewers.
Oh yeah, there we go. I'm gonna have to have the split screen in the old Letarski basement tonight. But all right, that sounds good. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to our live video, listening to the RotoWire Mixed Martial Arts podcast. Once again, he's John Litterine. You can give him a follow at JONLITTERINE. You can follow me at RotoJake. We're going to be back with you guys. The next card is UFC 265, Lewis versus Gane on August 7th here. So we'll check out you guys in August. Remember, rotowire.com/try, 10-day trial. If you want to use our lineup optimizer to mass enter, if you want to get an early look at our football rankings, if you want to you need to reevaluate your fantasy baseball team at the All-Star break. All of those features will be open to you going to rotowire.com/try. No credit card required. Thanks again for listening here, everyone, and good luck with your bets and your lineups. Take care, guys.
And your lineups.